And welcome back to the CC Football Podcast. Joined as always is Clay Wright and Craig Castellino.
Joy as always.
What's up?
Yeah, what's going on, Clay? This is a spontaneous. I don't think we've ever done this before. We
Spontaneous
we literally just
episode.
hopped on, yeah, and clicked record, and we have no idea what we're gonna do or talk about.
Yeah, we probably just lost our all thousands of followers that we had. They were like, "Oh, these guys, they don't know what they're doing. They're just gonna start yabbering for 40 minutes."
Yabbering. Um, yeah, we I don't know what was the thought process. We haven't done a podcast for a long time,
Yep.
and we've been talking about getting back on, and we finally were both free.
Yes, we were
And so we
finally
just
able
hopped
to
on.
fit it into both of our schedules. Craig was recently uh, in a different continent for the last 12 months. So that's why we haven't had any episodes come out in 12 months.
I was gone for a month, and I got back, and Nottingham Forest was in second place in the league. So
Third
I
place. They're in third now on goal difference.
third place in the league, yeah. So forgive me if I needed some time to get my thoughts together before being able to appear on record.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess this is a good place to start. Uh, you know, the league table is not as many people had predicted for many reasons going into this season. We have Liverpool and Arsenal up top, which, to be honest, isn't fairly surprising. I think most people had City winning the league, but Liverpool and Arsenal being at towards the top isn't too surprising. But really, the surprise is uh, Forest being in third, and then also towards the bottom of the table, you have United in 13th and Tottenham in 15th. So, Craig.
I in honor of Nottingham Forest, I changed my background to grass because forests have grass in
There you
them.
go. That's a good, great background.
Thanks. Um, um, okay. Yeah, so what would you say is your biggest surprise?
I mean, to me, the biggest surprise of the season, I like. I'm
Like
inclined,
You have
inclined.
Spurs and United. You have
It's definitely
Spurs,
City
United,
being in
West
fifth.
Ham, Everton at the bottom. You
Yeah,
have City being in fifth and having, they went on a run where they lost like 10 games in a row or something like that, or won 1 and 10. They didn't lose 10 games in a row. They won 1 and 10 or 1 and 11 or something. And then you have Nottingham Forest being tied for second place. And you're saying the biggest surprise is City in fifth?
um, I would say that a surprise that's being talked about the most in the media is definitely City being in fifth, just because of where they
Mm.
were predicted to finish. To be honest, I guess Forest being in third is probably the most personally surprising.
Yeah,
It has to be, but both of
I
them are
think
honestly are very very surprising.
yeah, it's just City. It's just because of the level of consistency that we've come to expect.
Yeah,
Like it's only City, right? It's not like if Liverpool were in fifth, if Arsenal were in fifth, if any of the other teams that we thought were going to do well this year were in fifth, that would not be anywhere close to Nottingham Forest being in third as far as surprise factor.
I
But
would
it's
say that
just
more
City
people probably predicted them to go down than to finish in the top four this year.
who Nottingham Forest.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you predicted them in the top four before this season, I test them for insider information or something.
yeah, or you're a Forest fan. But
Yeah,
even
or
for
you're
the
just
fans,
a
like you
horse
can't
fan.
have even asked for a better season. And they're not doing it. And usually you see the top four teams getting after the opponent and pressing the ball and everything like that. But they're kind of sticking to their guns and defending well and being hard to break down. And then they have a lethal counterattack, spearheaded by the man Chris Wood, who's
Dude,
been in
I've
great
been
form.
I've been biggest Chris Wood fan since the days of Wood and Barnes
Hmm.
at Burnley.
Yeah.
Um, I'm glad to see him finally making a name for himself because he deserves it. But you had an interesting take on Nottingham Forest in our group chat the other day. Um, how you don't approve or you do approve or
Well,
something.
yeah.
I didn't.
So the way it was phrased was Hamat asked if, yeah, because last year they almost went down because they spent so much money and then they uh, breached a lot of financial rules, so they got a point
Was
deduction
that
and
last year or
almost.
2 years ago?
I think it was last year, um,
Okay.
but nevertheless, they they almost went down. Yeah, last year they were in 17th place, only 6 points above the drop, but like they were in 17th place, right? So
Hmm.
Hamat asked if their, I guess, reckless spending is a model that other newly promoted clubs who have a desire, obviously they all have a desire to stay up, but um, who really want to stay up would, if that's a good strategy for them to take, and if they were to basically spend a bunch of money on a bunch of players, knowing that half of them won't ever really be a meaningful part of the team, but then you have like a whole squad of 30 or so new players that you can whittle down to a squad of 20 that is now competing for top four. And I said that it was not a very sustainable uh, example to follow. I don't think that Ipswich, who just got promoted, or even Leicester or Southampton, who are more of the yo-yo teams in recent years, like Forest put all their eggs into this basket of, like, imagine if they had gotten relegated and they had spent all this money on these players and then they didn't stay up,
They've
right?
spent so I got some stats. So Nottingham Forest has spent more than 360 million on transfers since 2022. So 2 years ago, which is what I was talking about in 2022, they had the record-breaking number of new players, which I don't even remember how many it was, but it
And
was
that's
a lot.
impressive because Chelsea, they're giving them a run for their money on that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been broken since by Chelsea, but I remember in 22, Nottingham Forest just were signing people left, right, and center. Um, Let me see if I can find while we keep talking how many people they actually signed. But um, their net spend in last year was 66. That was their net spend because they recouped a lot of money in sales. Um, but I don't know how much they actually spent last year. But yeah,
Yeah, well, I
so
guess
you're
while you're
not a
looking for
fan.
that, I can just kind of say, like, the 66 million. We've kind of had a brief discussion about this right before the podcast about the power of finance in the Prem, especially this last few years, where not only do the top teams have money now, but the even the mid table and seemingly the newly promoted teams have the ability to spend pretty large figures. Not, obviously, they still can't compete with the $100 million players that uh, the big clubs at the top of the Prem and also across the world can do, but they can spend bigger than, probably they're still in the top 10% of clubs across Europe in terms of ability to spend. Um,
Yeah,
like
and I mean
66 million
Nottingham
really isn't that
Forest.
much for a Prem team anymore.
Yeah, but also it's worth keeping in mind that Nottingham Forest is they're not they're not like a small club like many of the other promoted clubs that we see.
Right. Historically, no, they're
Like
not.
they have more spending power than probably like your Ipswich. It's not like Luton Town was coming to
Yeah.
and
RIP.
was able to drop 360 million in 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, I for some reason I haven't been able to find this. You're better at this research stuff than I am.
Okay, well,
One,
I'll look it
two,
up. You
three.
can tell me what your take is. Like, do you think that's a model that newly promoted teams, like, let's say that it's not a anomaly like Luton Town coming up. Let's say you have like a Burnley coming up next year, a team that has historically been in the Prem fairly consistently, right? So they don't have
Yeah.
as much money as or they have more money than like an
Than
anomaly
your
promoted.
small clubs.
Right, right. Do you think that they should
Yeah,
follow that?
yeah. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. It clearly worked. I mean, it took them obviously 2 years for it to like properly settle and work, but it did work. Like all there. I mean, the
Yeah,
fact that they're in third place right now, and like I said, we're saying third place. They're tied for second, right? Is what you said
yeah.
on points. Um, yeah, the fact that they're in tied for second place with Arsenal, whatever, 2 games behind Liverpool, or whatever it is, 2 or 3 games behind Liverpool, is, I mean, that's pretty insane for a club that was promoted 2 years ago, a club that hasn't been in the league for a long time, to get promoted and then 2 years later be. It's hard to say competing for the title, obviously, because I mean they kind of are, but obviously it's unrealistic to expect them to actually be in the title race come at the end of the year. But if Arsenal's in the title race, then so is Nottingham Forest because they're tied on points.
Yep.
So I'm not against them. If clubs have the money to spend and they're willing to spend it and take that risk, sure, I say
No,
go
I think
for it.
it is I like the ambition, to be honest. Like I'm not saying that the ambition is not bad. I just think that signing that volume of players, I just looked it up. They signed 22 players in the 22 to 23 transfer window, which is,
22 players is ridiculous.
for reference, I would think that like a first team usually has about 20 to 25 players, and they already had
Yeah,
a first team, right? So they assigned a whole new team plus the guys they already had. And some of them were successes, right? But some of them were not. And so
a
it's
lot of
just,
them are not.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is also is that nowadays, like they spent 142 million pounds during that window, but they are able to recoup some of it by selling them on and stuff, probably for a loss in the grand scheme of things. But I'd be interested to see if the losses that they have accumulated throughout the player sales or will accumulate, if that will be less or greater than the money that they could make if they make the Champions League, um,
Mm.
and stay up in the Prem. Like what the
How much money do
financial
you make for
numbers on
making
that.
the Champions League?
Not sure, but I know it's a good. Not only is it good for your like immediate pockets, but obviously you become more of a attractive destination for potential,
Proposition.
yeah, for new transfers and stuff. So I mean, we could see if they're able to
Sign
finish
22
top
more
four,
players
then
next year.
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Okay. Um, let's talk about Liverpool.
Let's do it.
You like Liverpool.
Just a little bit.
You said, and I quote, you would give at this point Liverpool a 99.9%
That's not what I said.
confidence
I
or
never said
chance
that.
of, you said you have
I
99.9%
did not say that.
confidence
For the
in
record, I did
Liverpool
not say
winning,
that.
the league from here on out.
What was the number I said? I think I said 80%.
Yeah, I think you said 80%. You
Yeah,
sticking by that?
I will stick to it. I will say that the results from the weekend, if they had flipped, like they both games seemingly looked like they were going to, where Liverpool pulled out a last minute winner from Darwin, and then Arsenal choked away a 2-0 lead against Villa. If those results had flip flopped, then I would be a little bit
3 point gap.
less. It would have been, yeah. But they do have a game in hand, so it still would have been, if they win the game in hand, then it would be 6 points. But the game in hand is the Merseyside
It's
derby
not.
away. Was not a guaranteed win.
Yeah.
You know,
Even if it wasn't more, you said Derby away. Game in hand is still just a game in hand. It's not points.
no, it's not.
Um, yeah, it's interesting because it seems like 80%, like that seems like a good, like I don't think you're being overly confident or anything like that. Like I would probably, I mean, I don't, I would probably say the same thing. If you ask me how confident are you that Liverpool will win the league, I'd probably say higher, actually. I'd probably go even like 90%. But it puts it in perspective how fragile the lead actually is when you said, like, talked about the results last. All it takes is one week Like it could happen this weekend if
Good.
Liverpool if Liverpool draw or lose and Arsenal, win, then all of a sudden it's only a 3 point gap, yes, with the game in hand, but then all of a sudden now you're not feeling so confident, and you go from feeling 90% to like, oh, we're only 3 points ahead. So 80% is probably a good number, but it's gonna take like Liverpool are gonna have to be City level of consistent. Like they're gonna have to finish the season like City normally
Yeah.
finishes their seasons.
Yeah. Definitely. They do have to keep their foot on the gas. And you said that it just takes 1 week, but also like those type of games, I will say I'm trying not to be too confident because I don't want to like jinx it. And I'm kind of like walking on pins and needles right now because I'm afraid of if I say something, then I'm going to jinx it.
Yeah.
But like the type of games that we like the one that we won at Brentford last weekend with the 90th minute or stoppage time winner. Um, those are the games that champions win, right? Those
Mm.
are the where everyone seemed to turn off the TV and walk away and go to the grocery store and do whatever, but like they pulled it out, rabbit out of the hat somehow, even in a game where I think they probably did deserve to win, but they weren't at their best, right? Those are the
Yeah.
type of games where the champions win and get the results. So
Yeah. Kind of like when this same weekend United were or no, last weekend when United were losing to Southampton until the 85th minute, and then they scored. Ahmad scored that hat trick. That's the game. That's how you know. That's how you know you're watching a champion team when they can pull out a result like that at the very
exactly.
end of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, as a Liverpool fan, Clay Troyer was like very he wasn't he was like, Clay, I'm worried about you guys this year and stuff, because he was thinking that we were gonna have some sort of slump, uh, transitioning from the Klopp era. But I mean, top of the league by 6 points with the game in hand, and then top of the Champions League,
Champions
where it
League.
seems like we've almost secured the top number one spot in the Champions League with a game to go. I mean, you can't ask for much more. Haven't dropped any points in the Champions League either.
Yeah, 7 out of 7 or something like
Yep, 7 out of 7. And the thing is like at the beginning of the year, I think that the squad definitely had some growing pains to Slot's tactics and stuff where they were getting results, but I was saying that they're getting results, but I think that they have another gear. Either they have another gear to unlock, or these results won't be sustainable. And now I think that we have seen their form dip a little bit recently, but in the most part, we have seen the dominance that leads me to believe that they do have the quality in order to put together a run to see out the title charge.
that. And what are your thoughts on like, because like you said, for a lot of this season, at least in my opinion, it's not like Liverpool have been, you know, they haven't been producing the most convincing, dominant performances like whatever you talk about the city teams or like maybe Liverpool in 2020 when they won the league, when you were like blowing teams off the park. They've just been getting the results.
Yep.
For the most part. Obviously they have had some very dominant performances, but there's a lot of times where they're just winning games, like you said, like champions do. But a lot of that also probably has to do with, at least except for recent weeks, probably has to, you could just say, some people might say, and you could defend it or not defend it. Oh, they're just the most Salah team, you know, like when the um like who am I thinking about? Um like when what's his name? Cole Palmer. Like Chelsea last year, right? And it
Yeah.
was just like Cole Palmer would just like produce some. I mean, they weren't at the top of the table. It was like, oh, he's just going to produce something, and okay, so they're scoring some goals, they're getting some results. So my point of saying all that is maybe you disagree with that, but let's say, God forbid, knock on wood, but let's say Salah gets injured or something for the rest of the season, right? Going back to your slot transition, oh, you think Liverpool have improved? Like, you think that they're still good enough to pull it off, or do you think? Like, do you think they've actually fully adapted, or has Salah been kind of
No,
carrying
Salah definitely. I mean, it helps when you have on form the best player in the world playing for your team.
them?
And I think I saw a stat today that he had 38 goal involvements in his first 31 games this year, which is ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Um, and I mean, you can't lie. I can't lie and be like, oh no, that wouldn't hurt our chances. Obviously, it would hurt our chances
Of course, it would
massively.
hurt your
Yeah,
chances.
I don't. I
But I'm
think
saying,
that if you,
would it turn things around? Like, I'm not saying hurt your chances. I'm saying, would it, like, has he been? I'm not saying that this is true, but I'm asking, has he been, like, is the rest of the team not even actually that good, and has he been carrying them? I don't think that's true, but
I don't
I'm
think
just
so. I
asking.
will say though, the last few games where Liverpool have drawn a couple and dropped some results, even versus the Carabao Cup for Spurs, like Salah was a lot quieter during those games, which could lead you to believe, and it probably would make me believe that if he were to get removed from the team for some reason, like injury or something like that, or he doesn't resign, then uh, I mean, that kind of gives you a preview into saying, okay, this is what the team can do without him, and it's not obviously as good as the product
Hmm.
when he's on the pitch producing at his best. Um,
Yeah. I mean, that being said, I mean, there are other players at Liverpool who are having unbelievable seasons,
mm-hmm.
specifically in the midfield. Like, the obviously the two in the midfield. Um, Van Dijk's been having a pretty good season. Um, I guess that's probably it. But there are other people other than Salah who have been having,
Oh, definitely. There are people
like,
who have taken
world
steps
class
forwards.
seasons.
Yeah. I mean, no one would have predicted that Gravenberch would have stepped in and
Yeah,
without Rodri playing this year, arguably became the best holding midfielder in the league. Um,
yeah,
and then McAllister, we already knew he was really good, but he just fits the system and the complements Gravenberch perfectly with his passing ability and just all aroundedness, I guess.
yeah.
He's really good. Obviously, we knew that Van Dijk also was a world class player, but he has maintained his levels. And um, I do think that there are some even players like Cody Gakpo, where like we've
Mm,
seen what he can do for the Dutch national team, but hasn't really put it all together for Liverpool in the
mm.
club side. I think his numbers won't astound you, but he has scored some very
Important goals.
timely goals.
Timely, that's a good
Yes,
word.
he's
Yeah.
he's he's produced when it's
Momentum
needed.
shifter.
Yeah, he's produced when he's
Yeah.
needed. But there are holes in this team, and I do think there are areas where the squad could improve, especially in this window when there's a week left and we haven't done anything. I would like to see them maybe improve at left back because Robertson has lost a step this year, and um, also at forward because Jota. I love Jota. I think he's an incredible finisher and stuff, and he is the best striker we have, but he just can't stay fit. Um,
Yeah.
and then we all know Darwin's issues, although he did rescue us last game.
Yep.
But all in all, like you can't
Slight
complain about too much, right?
inconsistencies.
Like it's not. I'm if I was complaining about Liverpool not spending money in this window, I mean, I don't think anybody would have much sympathy for me because look at where we are right now. So
Yeah. And hopefully for for Salah's sake, hopefully Liverpool do pull through. Because I don't know if he's leaving or staying. Obviously, as a United fan, it's not like I want Liverpool to win the league. But I think Salah deserves more than one Premier League title. And if he is going to leave, then
yeah,
obviously this is his last chance to get
I have
another.
seen
Unless he's leaving to go to City or something,
that would be horrible. I think
or
that
not
I have
Forest.
seen speculation. That's all I can call it, but that at least that Salah and Van Dijk have both re-signed contracts. But they
Oh,
haven't announced it yet because
really?
there's three Salah, Van Dijk, and Trent all are out of contract, right? And Trent hasn't signed a contract yet. And basically, the theory amongst the Liverpool fans is, and this could be dangerous because they could all end up leaving, but that Salah and Van Dijk have signed a new contract and the club hasn't announced it yet because that would put because then we're all looking at Trent being like, "Yo, why aren't you signing up?" And that would put
Hmm.
pressure on him to sign, which could end up forcing him away. So they're letting him have some time to think, I guess, some privacy before announcing it. Like they want him to make up his mind whether he's going to Madrid or he's staying before they announce the other two signings.
So let me ask you another question on that then. If Salah has signed a new contract, how old is Salah, by the way?
32?
Okay, so he's not old, but he's not young.
No.
Um, and yeah, if I mean for a winger, he's definitely not young. Like
Yeah.
once you're past 32, you're supposed to. He might not be, but you're supposed to be obviously, in the decline. If Salah signed a new contract with the way he's performed this season, surely it's got to be pretty big money, right? I don't know, but
It
I'm
would be.
assuming that
Yeah.
it would have to be big money. Is there any part of you that it hasn't come out yet, but let's say he signed it, let's say it's really big money. Is there any part of you that's like, oh, I'm so glad he stayed, but also like in the back of your mind, it's like, man, maybe that's a risk we didn't really need to take. Like maybe it's time to, like maybe I don't know, maybe it was a good time for him to leave and for us to look towards the future. And he ends on a great season with all these goals and stuff, but we use that money to build for the future.
Uh, no, I don't think so because I have 2 points for that. One, because he has gotten better pretty much every single year he has been at Liverpool.
That's definitely not true.
As a
But
creator, he has. He has transformed his game to adapt to his agingness, I guess I could say. That
oh,
might that
okay.
might be
Yeah, yeah.
better. He's not as explosive as he was when he was in his prime, but
Yeah.
he has shown me that he can transform his game to make me confident to think that, especially if it's only like a 2 or 2 year deal or so, that he'll be making enough like changes to his game to make it worth the money, right? The second
Okay.
one, which is probably the more important one to me, is yeah, you're freeing up wages, but if he left this summer, we would not get any fee for him, right? So if it would be different if it was last summer and we had accepted 150 million from Saudi Arabia for him, right? Because like then you can obviously use that money plus the wages he deserted to get
Yeah.
another player. But like because he'd be leaving on a free, he would be freeing up wage budget, but not like any transfer budget, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So
'Cause, I mean, his wage budget is not enough to sign a new player on its own.
right,
Well, it might be depending on,
depending on
you
how
know,
much you make, I guess it could
how
be.
what. Well, depending on how much he makes, and also just depending on what profile of player you're going for. If
Right.
you're going for like some young gun who's not going to cost that much, then Salah's wages might be enough to cover like the transfer fee. If you're signing, someone from Scunthorpe United who has big potential. No disrespect to Scunthorpe United. Um, okay, good talk, good talk. What are we doing next?
I want to hear your take on United and the start to the new era under Amorim.
Dude, I'll be honest. I'm loving this new era. I told you, you and I were talking the other day. You know that I've always dreamt of being a Crystal Palace fan, because I think that they're the happiest fans in the world because they get to support a team that most seasons, more seasons than not, is just comfortably mid-table, not competing for Europe and not also competing for relegation. Sorry, I got distracted because our Zoom meeting's running out of time. Um, and I've always said that's the dream position for a club to be in because there's just no stress as a fan. You go to the game, if you lose, whatever you lose. If you win, it's a big deal because you're not really expecting to win every game. So you go there and you win, and you're happy. You go there and you lose, you're like, you're probably a little bit unhappy, but it doesn't actually affect anything because you're not, it doesn't affect anything. You're still gonna finish
Yeah,
mid-table.
but
You might
don't you
finish,
have like higher aspirations than being a mid-table club
who, me?
where you're
or the
Well,
Crystal Palace fans.
I would like to see a poll amongst Crystal Palace fans to see how they feel about their year, because I guarantee you that they probably want more than 12th place every year.
They probably do. They probably do. But I wouldn't if I was a Crystal Palace fan. I would be very happy with the way things are. And um, finally, I've gotten that as a United fan. Obviously, I'm being semi facetious, or obviously I'm joking a little bit, but I'm only half joking. Like it was like this last weekend when United played. Who do we play? Brighton and lost. It sucked like it always does when United lose. But realistically, at the end of the game, I didn't feel as outraged about it as I would have in other situations because, like, logically, my brain just couldn't see any meaningful impact of, having lost that game versus if we had won. If we're still going to finish, I don't think we're going to get relegated, and I don't think we're going to get Europe, regardless of whether we win or lose that game.
Yeah, but you should be
So,
wanting, at least at this point, then to show building blocks for future seasons, right?
yeah, no, you should. But I'm saying so that's why I'm still disappointed, and the performance was really bad. But obviously, if you have to choose between a performance being really bad and the loss like costing you Europe or the title or relegation or something like that, obviously you're going to feel a lot more passionately when you lose those games than when you do not. I can't control it, right? Like I'm not saying that I wasn't upset. Of course I was upset because it was really bad performance and I want to see progress. But just naturally, I can't be as upset as I would be if it was really a bad performance and it was going to cost us something. It literally cost us nothing. Um, us as in United, because I did sign recently, if you didn't hear. Um, so, anyways, this season obviously has been really poor. To put it to quote Ruben Amorim, what did he say? He's like, I think we are being the worst United team maybe in history.
Yeah.
I think that's word for word. Um, that's probably not true. I don't know if he said it in history. If he said it in history, then that's definitely not true, obviously, because United have been relegated, etc. Back in the pre-Premier League days. But this, I mean, this, if the season goes like this, it definitely will be the worst United season in the Premier League era. I think the lowest we've ever finished is eighth,
So do
which
you
was last year.
do you put most of the onus of the blame on the managers or onto like the players, or the hot clubs higher up? So like where is this disconnect that's leading them to have such a poor season?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think, I mean, obviously, like I was a big Ten Hag defender, and I wanted him to get another season. But obviously, how many ever months into the season when we were sitting in 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th place or whatever, there's probably just no excuse anymore. Like it was worse than last season, and he had all those injuries last season. This year he didn't have as many injuries, so it's hard to defend him this year. At the same time, you watch the games and you see some there were a lot of situations where I was watching the game and you see a good move and they miss an open goal or they don't cross the ball or just the final pass is missing and you're like, well, the typical saying of the coach can't put the ball in the back of the net. Like there's only so much a coach can do. So it's definitely a mix of both, right? The players aren't living up to the standards that they should. I mean, United have way better players um than what they're showing. Um but yeah, I can't defend Ten Hag, so I think that they were forced to sack him. Now, Amorim, we've seen it's kind of been a roller coaster. It hasn't been just downhill with
No, it
him.
hasn't. I mean, you
Um,
got wins versus City and
City,
Arsenal, and then you drew against
yep,
Liverpool. Like you got good
yep,
results against the club's biggest rivals, I guess.
yeah, and I think that it's very clear to me. Not in every single game, and he's new, so maybe it won't be consistently clear, but there's a lot more. I'm seeing a lot more desire in the team, a lot more fight in the team. And he's picking players. I think this is common knowledge by now. He's picking players who are willing to like the way he's picking his team is players who are willing to fight and run,
Mm,
right? Players are going to get out there and run for 90 minutes, 100 minutes, and that's why you're seeing the
Rashford.
result. Even though,
That's why you're
yeah,
seeing
for example,
Rashford getting.
Rashford not playing,
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe maybe leaving the club at the end of the season. But what I was going to say is that's why you're seeing a lot of games where the performances might not be great, but then you have specifically people like Ahmad or like even Bruno recently who are score like Bruno today scoring goals at the end. Like there's a little bit more fight and desire where it's like, okay, the team is not really playing well. It's still not an identity, right? They're still not free flowing football. Um, but at least a lot of the players on the pitch are actually showing that they want to be there. They're willing to fight. They're willing to go to the end. They don't really know when they're beat. And that's progress for me, right? It's very tough to throw him in this situation, like absolute chaos of a situation in the middle of the season and then expect him to do really well. And to his credit, he is really trying to like implement his style. He's not trying to I think you and I have different perspectives on this, or like we've had conversations about this. Sometimes coaches come in and they do what it takes just to get the results, right? And you're not usually a fan of that, right? You're usually more of a long term. And
Right.
I think that to Amorim's credit, he is really trying. Like from day one, he implemented his formation with three at the back. He every game for the first like five, six, 7 games, he played like completely different lineups every game. Maybe not completely different, but he was playing different people in there. He was giving everybody a chance. He was using it. He was using the games basically as games to figure out what he's going to do. He wasn't going for results. He was trying to say, okay, this is my team. I'm going to need to figure it out. So I think it's hard to judge him. I really think it's hard to judge him as a coach. I think Ten Hag you can probably judge and say, okay,
Didn't
he
work
is to
out.
blame for
Yeah.
yeah, he is to blame. It didn't work out. Amorim hasn't turned it around, but I think that it's because he's willing. He took that risk of like, okay, I'm willing to just take a bunch of losses if need be, but I'm gonna figure this team out, and then come next year, we'll have an identity, we'll be ready to go. Well, let's see if that actually happens. But
Yeah. It definitely is like you mentioned the effort part. And I think a lot of it could be the tactics, and also a lot of it could be that the players know that they're fighting to keep their spot in the team for the next season. Because I mean,
could be, yeah.
Amarim also, I mean, let's be fair to him. He came in the middle of the season, right? He didn't have a preseason like the other new managers like Slot did to be able to figure out who he liked in the squad and who he didn't like, and implement his tactical style. So I think honestly, I mean, we can kind of treat, like you said, because United are pretty safe from relegation and they're pretty far from Europe. They can kind of treat the next, I guess, third of the season, the last third of the season, to be like an extended preseason almost. Of let's get some good ideas and fundamentals and type of football we want to play, and then also figure out personnel wise who's going to be sticking around and where we have to plug some holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Any last thoughts in our last 45 seconds here?
Um, no, are we ending it, or are we just gonna restart the meeting and crop them together?
Uh, we can crop them together.
Well, it's up to you. I thought you wanted to have a big
Oh yeah, we
Hazard
do. We do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Salah
yeah.
debate.
It's finisher. All right. I'll
Or
stop.
we could end this. We could make that a separate video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. So we're gonna stop this recording.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, like we said, we didn't have any planning, but thanks for listening. We'll have another episode coming up here soon to settle the Hazard versus Salah debate. See ya.